So, although um, Paul had been doing ministry in a different part of the world from Peter, we know. Sorry, get that out of the way with the camera. We know that God, the same God, was working in both of them and was blessing both ministries. So Paul, through a revelation, decides to go to the apostles to see and make sure that he was measuring what he had been preaching to make sure there wasn't anything to be corrected. This is really important because you may find that you get a revelation from God. Maybe you're reading the Bible and you come across something that is very clear and you're going to follow that direction. But the scriptures tell us that there's wisdom in the counsel of many. And so there isn't anything that should happen any counsel you should get, even from the Bible, that you should necessarily just run with, especially if it's a big decision or one that you've got some questions about. Um, there, there really are no Rambos in the faith. We are called to be a blessing to others, and others be a blessing to us. Um, I can't go into detail on this, maybe one day I'll be able to, but I recently had kind of a mix up. I made some mistakes on how I communicated. Well, it wasn't some mistakes so much as I just wasn't fully clear on a couple things, which was my own fault. And some disagreement on how to do some ministry. Okay. And some people got pretty upset with me over that. And I remember leading up to my final decision, I called a bunch of ministers, just a bunch of them, to get their advice. And, you know, it's not that God doesn't have prescriptions in His Word, but there are some areas where you need guidance from God. And sometimes guidance is offered through the counsel of others who cherish Christ and are regularly in the Word and so forth. And I believe that the guidance they gave me, I believe also that I had a clean conscience because went as far as I could to make sure that I was making the best possible decision. If I was making the wrong one, God would show me, and God showed me what the decision was ultimately, and He confirmed this in multiple ways. But even if He hadn't have confirmed it, I still would have taken a clean conscience because I did the same thing what Paul did here. Okay, Paul, although a revelation directly from Christ, still went to the other apostles, to make sure he hadn't been running in vain. Does this mean he had doubts about God? Absolutely not. It's not that he had doubts about God. It's that he was taking on the wisdom he had learned when he was a Pharisee. So he goes to them, and he says, they added nothing to me. They were influential people, but God doesn't show impartiality. But he definitely wanted to go there and weigh and measure, make sure he had been doing this correctly. And he was doing this, his motive was to please God. And God blessed that and showed him that he had been doing this miraculous work in both factions, both Paul's factions with the Greeks and Peter's factions with the Jews. Now, just to make the point real quick, because I want to make the same point Galatians is trying to make. The same point Galatians is trying to make here, and what Paul is trying to make here, is that God was not showing impartiality. God was working both this same gospel in the Greeks and in the Jews. And this was incredibly important. In Acts, a lot is written about this. It's a big revelation. And so we move on now to a section here shortly that there's a lot of controversy about and should be really interesting.